Thank you for tuning in and checking out Unlucky a Memoir. My name is Kat. Everyone has a story. This one just happens to be mine. All right, where I left off last week, I just finished a 90-day therapeutic community inpatient facility. And I wasn't really sure where to go or what to do at this point. I had been abstinent for a decent amount of time now and was very unsure about how to proceed and go forward. So I took a chance and an opportunity to go to a halfway house where I'm from. There was an inpatient facility that was partially hospitalized program where there was a blackout period and you got there and then you could move along and start working and doing other things. So I did that for a little bit and learned some really good stuff while I was there. um, I remember being in class one day with one of the counselors, and he had mentioned that if we were walking down the street and saw an alcoholic begging for money and you knew he was just going to get alcohol, would you give it to him? Everybody in the class said no. He immediately said, well, then you're killing him. Because up until that point, I didn't realize how dangerous alcohol truly was. If you ask most people what's worse, alcohol or opiates, most people would lean towards opiates. I used to. But I come to find out that withdrawing from opiates may feel like you're going to die. You're not. Withdrawing from alcohol, you truly could die. So your body becomes reliant on it and needs it to the point that it could not survive at some points without it. So while there, I managed to get employment and I was taking any job available. And because I just wanted to get through life, I wasn't too worried about living it at this point in time. So I took a job working on the back of a garbage truck, recycling truck, whatever. It was at that point in the early 90s or mid 90s, it's like $100 a day just to go out on the truck at night and come back. And I remember another counselor there pulled me aside and kind of got into me a little bit about it, telling me that I was too smart to be doing that and that I was made for more. And again, I didn't care. I just wanted to get through this program. That was a requirement. So while I was in the previous treatment center, I met a girl who was an alumni who used to come to events from time to time. While I was at the halfway house, I ended up on blackout, I think, for 30 days. And as soon as my first day of blackout was over, her and her friend came to pick me up in the back in their CRX, and I just hopped right into the back of the hatchback. At the time that the counselor happened to see me doing it, pulled them aside because he knew who they were and knew them. And yeah, this counselor kind of just knew everything that was going on. You could be miles away on the other side of town and you come back after you're signed out, and all of a sudden he goes, hey, what were you doing over? He just, either he knew people everywhere, he just happened to be everywhere, I don't know. So I followed through on that program and completed that program. At this point, I was starting to be institutionalized, used to living under a watchful eye. So I went from there to a 3/4 way house and moved from there to an Oxford house. In doing all this, I had regained some friendships and became a partner in a tattoo studio in the city. And while doing that, we used to love to go out and see live music. It wasn't long before I decided it was all right to start drinking again. But even at that point, I hid it from those people because I wasn't sure how they would feel about it. I remember all of us going to a bar for a band that we wanted to see. And while we're there, I used to drink a Diet Coke whenever we were out. I'd just get a pint glass Diet Coke, and that was it. On this night, I remember going up to the bartender and say, give me a bourbon and Coke, but keep it in this glass. because I wanted to hide it. And went back to the table and proceeded to drink that pint pretty quickly through a straw. And as the evening wound down, that was right towards the end when I drank that, we're walking out of the bar and everybody goes, well, hey, Cat doesn't drink, he can drive. So I proceeded to, because of guilt and shame, continue to hide the fact that I was drinking, got into the vehicle and drove hammered. Because mind you, that was the first time I drank in God knows how long. So my tolerance was way gone. And so was my perception of what was good or bad, considering I got behind that wheel and drove anyway. This proceeded for quite a while until I was going out multiple nights a week to the bar, coming back to the Oxford house, intoxicated, passing out. But I was also showing up for things, so I thought it was all right. I was showing up for the tattoo shop every day. And then when we would close the tattoo shop, we would get in the car and drive 10 or 15 miles to a warehouse that me and my partner were working at third shift in order to make sure the light stayed on at the tattoo shop and we could pay our bills. It was relatively slow. The area where we had our shop probably wasn't the best idea to put it there. That summer, the city of Allentown had a record number of murders, and a handful of them happened around our studio. There was one gruesome story, I won't get into too much detail, but they found the man forcibly put into a shopping cart after he was beaten, and they found him no longer alive. That was one of the things that happened on that summer while we had the shop there. And like I said, it was slow, so we worked a second job to support the studio. But I continued to come back to the Oxford house drunk multiple times, and they never picked up on that. What happened was they had voted me out of the house because I wasn't there enough, because I was working too much. So, needless to say, I moved on. But the thing is, I had a resentment for a long time with Oxford for this, because that house voted me out while I was not there in my room. It wasn't there. I came home after work to find out I had been voted out of the house, which goes against Oxford House Charter. But anyway, so I move out of there with nowhere to go. My father rents me a U-Haul van that I put all my stuff into and keep for a couple days, crashing on couches or staying in the van until I ended up finding my first apartment. And it was a nice apartment. Got in there. Things are going well for a little while. And I moved from the shop that I was a partner in to work for a different shop that was closer to my apartment. And it really was not long before the drugs came back into my life and people came back into my life. I proceeded to, here and there, doing cocaine or methamphetamine, drinking or smoking weed, and before long, the opportunity rose to do heroin again. And I took it, and I rode it until the wheels fell off. I still remember I was laying in my apartment, dope sick, trying to figure things out and figure out how to get some dope. And a friend of mine from the recovery had called, who I'd been friends with for years, but we originally were friends through addiction. And we were talking on the phone for must be a half hour until finally, I don't know if it was him or me, brought up the topic of using, and we both ended up copping to being dope sick, and we were both trying to get a hold of each other to figure out if either of us had any ideas on how to get anything. But the shame and guilt kept us from admitting it to each other until, and then that was it. I had a running buddy, so we got together and we started running, man. And it just really, um, it really just took off from there to the point where I ended up, we were both living, we were both living in that apartment, squatting pretty much. I was barely paying bills. And another group of people, there's a guy and a girl that used to drive us around to go and make sure we would go and steal things, and then we'd sell them, then we'd go cop and they'd get a percentage. They took mercy on us and said, "Why don't you guys come stay at our apartment?" Because I was getting ready to get evicted. And they said, "There's only one stipulation: you guys have to shower first." Uh, yeah, we were living pretty rough, pretty hard, and things were really, really unmanageable. So we ended up moving over there, and things really just kept on this hardcore downward spiral, and everything became extremely unmanageable and unable to cope with life. But I was in desperation mode and was going to do whatever it took. I think next week we'll wrap this part of the story up with the downfall of that part of my life and where it went and what happened. So, with that, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in every week and checking out my story and coming along for the ride. It really does. It means a lot to me. Um, I really appreciate all of you. Thank all of you. Please like, share, subscribe, all those YouTube things. And with that, catch you all next week.